Hey everyone, so in languages like Python and PHP, we have these magic methods that allows us to do some, I would say, interesting things. For example, I have this object from this class, magic class, and I'm calling these methods, and these methods does not even exist in the class. I will show you in a second. And this actually works, so I can invoke them and I get some values in return. And here's the implementation of the class. So I have this private dictionary, and to access anything, you need to invoke a method on the object. So you write get underscore, then the name of the attribute from this dictionary. This is very simple example, but I think it delivers the point behind these kind of methods, or like delivers a use case behind these kind of methods. Imagine if this is private thing and you need to control how to access the values in the dictionary. You can do that by using magic methods, and this is the magic method here. It's called get attribute. The same thing applies in PHP, and I believe in Laravel. I used Laravel when it was like 5.6, so I might be wrong here, but a lot of the methods from the ORM, from the query builder, are actually using the magic method behind the scenes. Like these methods does not even exist in the class, but somehow they work, and this is done by using the magic methods, which I think is very nice. And yeah, it's very simple code. I'm just splitting by underscore and getting the attribute, the key, and then just returning that. So I thought we will simulate this with JavaScript. And to do this, let me show you, it's called something that will help us do this. It's called the proxy object, and it exists in Node.js and in the browser, so you can use it anywhere. And this is basically just an object that comes in between the operations that you do on a specific object. So if you're trying to get a property from the object, before like your get action be delivered to the object, let's say, it will be delivered to the proxy before. So you can think of it as a middleware into the things you're trying to access or invoke from a specific object. And you can like interrupt all of these things on any object. So you can interrupt invoking an object, because functions are objects, so you can interrupt invoking them. So for example, in this example, we have this sum function, which is an object in JavaScript, and this is the proxy object we have, and we are passing it the sum function and the handler. The handler is just defining this apply function. So each time you try to invoke the proxy one function, it will use like the sum behind the scenes, but applying this apply rule here. So each time you call the proxy one, it will actually invoke this function, and the target will be the sum function, which is the first argument we passed here. Maybe this is not the best example to start with the proxy objects, but this is basically the idea. Here we have the argument list, and here we just multiply everything by 10. So it's sort of a way to override things. So we can override invoking functions. We can override even like constructing classes, or like invoking constructor functions with a new keyword. We can override, which is the thing we are interested in, the getters and setters for any property. We can even get properties that does not even exist. I'm going to show you that. And I'm going to show you at the end something that I have not found a use case for, but I think it's very interesting. Imagine creating an object where you can access and invoke anything from it, anything that does not exist, no matter how the level is. Like my object dot user dot name dot age dot say hi, then invoke that. All of these properties does not exist, but the object somehow, or JavaScript somehow, does not throw an error. So I would call that the magic object. We'll implement that at the end. So yeah, the main point behind this video is now to simulate magic methods, and to simulate mainly this thing we saw in Python. We want to do this in JavaScript. So to start, I'm gonna create an object. And this will be equal to new proxy. First thing, the target, I'm gonna leave it as an empty object. It does not matter that much in our case. And for the handler, I'm gonna create, so if you click or you hit Control and space, you get all of these auto completion. So you can override or interrupt all of these methods or all of these actions that we usually do on objects. So I'm gonna override the get, and this would be a function. And the first argument is the target, and the second one is the property name. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna extract the key. So for example, magic.get name, because usually you use camel cases in JavaScript, not underscore. So we will convert this to name and then access, let's say, an object that we have inside our object that contains that name. Yeah. So this will be a string. I'm gonna say replace the get with nothing. Then I need to convert that to lowercase. Now return. And since, yeah, I will just, for now, I will return, I need to access this object, right? And this will be accessible through the target, which is very nice. So you don't need to define this like globally, you can just put it here. And of course, I need to add like the value here. So name will be my name. And ID is 1. So return target of P. Now if I do console get name like this, and it's actually go get ID and get what also page. So dot, I made a typo. Oops, yeah. Maybe I have did something wrong, but oh yeah, target dot rect dot then okay. So we get these, and to achieve the same behavior, let's convert these into methods. And what we need to do, of course, if you run this, you will face an error because you are invoking the returned value from the get, right? So what you need to do is to actually return a function that returns the value. So that works. And the cool thing is, so we can do something like prefix. Yeah, I'll just leave it as a prefix. Prefix and add this. So we get the prefix attached here, which is very nice. So you can create these dynamic getters. So we achieve the same thing in Python, but in JavaScript. I think this is very nice and this is very interesting. And by the way, just remember the use case for this proxy object, which is used a lot, at least in the React world. It's this. Let me show you. It's this package called immer. This is how they convert every mutable action to immutable action. They use the proxy objects and they interrupt every action you are trying to do. Of course, it's like I'm simplifying things a lot, but this is what they basically do. This is the main idea. They interrupt every action. They try to convert it into immutable action. So yeah, I believe this is a very interesting project, I would say. And I remember figuring out it was heavily like built on top of the proxy API or the proxy object. So yeah, it's a very interesting project. So this is, we achieved the main goal, but I'm gonna show you now other or one interesting use case. So we'll call it, of course, there is a link in the description. You can find all of this code. You don't need to pause the video. So let me show you. We now need to achieve, if I try, so the starting or the target is empty object, okay? But now if I try to say what, I don't want this to actually like throw an error. I want this to work, and I need to achieve this using the proxy object. starting from an empty object as a target. I'm gonna override or intercept the get action. I don't care about the target, and I care only about the property name. What I'm gonna do, so let's say I'm gonna return, let's say, an empty object like this. Now, if I try to console log, this will actually work. It returns an empty object. But if I try to go to another level, even though this property does not exist, but if I try to go to a different level, this will return undefined because it is undefined. Now, third level, this will throw an error because I'm trying to read a property from undefined. So we should somehow dynamically always return the same proxy object each time you access a property. And the way you do this is you return another proxy, and you need to pass to it what kind of, like, what's the target, right? You can pass another empty object, and you can do, so what, you can do the same handler like this, but if you notice a pattern, now we need to do the same thing here, right? And this is not dynamic. A very quick way to fix this is just to pass this, and this will point to this function. I hope you know how this keyword works in JavaScript, but yeah, this in this context will point to the handler object, and this is because I'm defining a function expression. Like, this is a shortcut for function. This is a shortcut for, yeah, function get, or sorry, like this. What I did in the previous syntax, this is a shortcut for this one. And inside function, or when you define functions with the function keyword, that this is bounded. Like, there are some rules where this is bounded. In this case, this will be bounded to the object where you define this function inside of it. And this is one of the big differences between functions when you define them with the function keyword and raw functions. So here, this, if you hover over it, should not point, yeah, it points to the global this, which is the alternative of the window function, of the window object in the browser. So global this stores everything, like, so if you go outside everything, I can time out. But you don't need to write this every time in Node.js. You can just do this, and that's it. So this is the global, the global scope where everything ends up inside of it. But using, yeah, this is the big, I hope this is, I'm not confusing everything, but this is the biggest difference between functions when you declare them with the function keyword and functions as in raw functions. Like this is not bounded in raw functions. They keep the outer scope. They don't have a new value, and they don't have things like the arguments list, and I believe there are some couple of other alternatives, but yeah, basically that's it. So I'm gonna return this as a function. Now this should work. I always get an empty object, which is very nice. One thing you can do, I can do this, or which will always return this. So I think this is very interesting thing, and like you can create this magic object that always that will never throw any error if you try to access anything from it. This could be useful for some tests maybe, but I'm not sure how. Like, it needs a lot more work to be actually useful. The final thing, which I talked about in the beginning, what if I want to do something like this? I need something like this to also not break using these magic objects. Now it will break because I'm returning a proxy object that targets this object. It's not invocable. So what I need to do now, and let's copy this console log, or let's copy everything, and let's go create another file, 3.js. So the goal to make line 10 now works. So what I will do, I will start with, since I need it to be invocable and only functions are invocable, which they are objects, I'm gonna define here a function called magic. And each time you try to get a property, I'm gonna just retain another proxy that the target of that proxy is just a function. I will call it also magic. This should not work, or let me just finish everything. The second thing we need to interrupt is invoking these functions, because as you can see now, we are not retaining anything from these. So in this case, we will invoke this, it will work, but it's not retaining anything, and this will fail. So we need to actually interrupt invoking these functions. And you can do this by defining the apply function. So the first argument is the function you are trying to call, and this would be this argument inside of that function, I believe. And the third thing is the arguments list. I will do the same exact thing. Oops. I will return just another proxy object that uses just an empty function as a target, and just returning the same kind of handler we defined up here. And this now should work, hopefully. Yeah, and it does work. So anything you do in this object will just keep working, and it should be fine. Yeah, again, I'm not sure if this is super practical, but I guess it's super interesting. I have another video coming about how using the proxy object with the Reflect API could. Let me show you. I'll show you an example. I think that's me. Okay. So I once posted about this. This is a map data structure that if you try to override something that already exists by using .set, it will prevent you from doing that. It will not override references. So like one use cases of this proxy object alongside immer, which is very like valid use case, is this another use case, which I think is also interesting. Yeah, I will create a video explaining this. And here we're using this reflect object, which usually used with the, this one, reflect, which is usually used with the proxy object. Yeah, I think these are some interesting things and could lead to some interesting, like I would say, really magic objects. Like we are just writing 8 lines and we are able to do these kind of weird things, which is very nice. Yes, and that's it. I hope this was useful, or shed any lights or anything you think could be useful to you. And yeah, it's just, yeah, that's it. Bye.